The sun-scorched horizon of Wyoming Territory shimmered like a mirage. As Tabitha Bell stepped off the stagecoach into the dusty main street of Silver Creek in the summer of 1876, her small valise clutched to her chest, and a letter crumpled in her trembling hand, the only evidence that she had family in this unforgiving land. Tabitha was 22, with auburn hair that caught the sunlight in copper ripples and eyes the color of storm clouds. She was neither plain nor striking, but what set her apart was her silence. She hadn't spoken a word since the fever that took her parents 5 years ago, leaving her with nothing but memories and a mysterious letter from an aunt she'd never met. The stagecoach driver tossed down her trunk. "End of the line, miss. Welcome to Silver Creek." He waited expectantly for a thank you that wouldn't come, then shook his head in disappointment. "Another strange one," he muttered, climbing back onto his seat. Tabitha stood alone, dust swirling around her boots as the townspeople glanced at her with curious eyes before continuing about their business. She withdrew the worn letter from her pocket and read the address again. Martha Bell, Silver Creek General Store, Wyoming Territory. The walk to the general store took only minutes, but to Tabitha, it felt like crossing an ocean. When she pushed open the door, a bell jingled overhead, announcing her arrival. Behind the counter stood a woman with gray streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in Tabitha's travel-worn appearance. Tabitha handed over the letter with shaking fingers. The older woman adjusted her spectacles and read it slowly, her expression hardening. "You're Elizabeth's girl?" she asked, her voice tight. When Tabitha nodded, Martha Bell sighed heavily. "I wrote that letter near 10 years ago, child. I never expected anyone to come." Martha studied her niece with calculating eyes. "I suppose blood is blood. You can stay in the back room for now. Can you work? Speak up, girl." When Tabitha remained silent, Martha's frown deepened. "What's the matter with you? Cat got your tongue?" Tabitha pulled a small slate and chalk from her bag and wrote quickly, "I cannot speak. Fever took my voice." Martha read it and scoffed. "Lord have mercy, a mute girl is the last thing I need. I've got customers to attend to, inventory to manage." She pinched the bridge of her nose. "You can stay a fortnight while I figure what to do with you. After that, well, we'll see." The back room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window that looked out on the mountains. That night, Tabitha cried silently into her pillow, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake coming west. The fortnight passed in a blur of hard work. Tabitha swept floors, stocked shelves, and did whatever tasks Martha assigned. She used her slate to communicate, but most customers found it odd and unsettling. They whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. "Poor Martha, saddled with a mute girl. Peculiar thing, ain't she? Gives me the shivers." Probably tetched in the head. Martha wasn't cruel, but she was distant and practical. At the end of 2 weeks, she sat Tabitha down at the small table in their living quarters. "I've been thinking," Martha said, folding her hands. "This arrangement isn't working. The customers find you disconcerting. I've asked around, but no one's looking for help, especially not a girl who can't speak." Tabitha's heart sank. She tried so hard to be useful, to earn her keep. "There's an orphanage in Cheyenne," Martha continued. "They might take you, though you're grown. Or there's a women's home in Denver for unfortunates." She wouldn't meet Tabitha's eyes. "I've arranged for you to take the stage next week." That night, Tabitha couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the stars over the distant mountains, feeling more alone than she ever had. Even the town's stray cat that sometimes visited her windowsill had abandoned her tonight. The next morning brought no relief. As Tabitha swept the porch of the general store, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A cattle drive was arriving, dusty men on horseback herding a sea of longhorns toward the stockyards at the edge of town. The cowboys whooped and hollered, their voices carrying on the wind. Most rode straight for the saloon, but one broke away, heading toward the general store. He dismounted gracefully, tying his horse to the hitching post before removing his hat and dusting it against his chaps. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of warm whiskey. His dark hair curled at the nape of his neck, and a week's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. He couldn't have been more than 27 or 28. "Morning, miss," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Nathan James, foreman of the Double Cross Ranch." Tabitha nodded politely, clutching her broom. Most men didn't bother introducing themselves to her once they realized she wouldn't respond. "Is Martha in?" "Mr. Carson sent me ahead to arrange supplies for the ranch before winter sets in." Tabitha pointed inside, and Nathan smiled. It transformed his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes and revealing a small dimple in his right cheek. "Much obliged," he said, then paused. "I don't believe I caught your name." Tabitha hesitated, then set down her broom and pulled out her slate. She wrote quickly, "Tabitha Bell." "Martha's niece." Nathan's eyebrows rose slightly as he read. "Nice to meet you, Miss Bell. That's a clever way to communicate." His matter-of-fact acceptance stunned her. No pity, no awkwardness, just acknowledgement. Before she could respond, Martha appeared in the doorway. "Mr. James." "I thought I heard your voice. Come in, come in. I have Mr. Carson's usual order almost ready." Nathan followed Martha inside, tipping his hat to Tabitha as he passed. She returned to her sweeping, but her mind remained on the kind-eyed cowboy who had treated her like a person, not a curiosity. Over the next few days, Nathan returned several times to finalize the ranch's order and arrange delivery. Each time, he made a point to greet Tabitha, sometimes asking questions she could answer with a nod or quick note on her slate. He learned she was from Boston, that she enjoyed reading, and that she had a talent for sketching. "You ever draw horses, Miss Bell?" he asked one afternoon. "The Double Cross has some of the finest quarter horses this side of the Mississippi." She shook her head, writing, "Only from pictures in books, never up close." "That's a shame," he said. "There's nothing like drawing something you can touch and smell and feel." He seemed about to say more when Martha called from inside. On his final visit, as Martha tallied the last of the supplies, Nathan approached Tabitha where she was arranging a display of canned goods. "Miss Bell," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I heard Martha talking to the stagecoach driver about your departure next week." Tabitha's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She hadn't told him she was being sent away. "Are you going willingly?" he asked directly. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Nathan frowned, running a hand through his hair. "I thought as much. Look, the Double Cross is looking for someone to help with cooking and such for the hands. The last cook quit to follow the gold rush to the Black Hills. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and you'd have your own cabin." Tabitha stared at him in disbelief. Was he offering her a position? "Mr. Carson's a fair man," Nathan continued. "And his wife, Sarah, is the kindest woman you'll ever meet. They wouldn't mind that you don't speak." He paused. "It's just a thought. Better than an orphanage, anyway." Before Tabitha could respond, Martha emerged from the storeroom. Nathan tipped his hat and left, but not before giving Tabitha a meaningful look. That evening, Tabitha gathered her courage and approached Martha with her slate. "I have been offered a position at the Double Cross Ranch," she wrote. "Mr. James says they need kitchen help." Martha's eyes widened. "Nathan James offered you a job when, today, while you were in the storeroom?" Martha sat heavily in her chair. "Well, I never. The Double Cross is a respectable outfit, I'll give them that. Carson runs a tight ship." She studied Tabitha. "You want to go?" "It's rough country out there, and ranch life isn't easy." Tabitha nodded firmly. Anything was better than being shipped off to an orphanage or home for unfortunates. "I suppose it solves both our problems," Martha said finally. "I'll write to Sarah Carson. If she agrees, you can go when Nathan returns for the supplies." 2 days later, Tabitha found herself perched on the supply wagon beside Nathan, her small trunk secured in the back among sacks of flour, coffee, and beans. The Double Cross Ranch lay 20 miles outside of Silver Creek, a half-day's journey through rugged terrain. "Mrs. Carson's looking forward to meeting you," Nathan said as they pulled away from town. "Been wanting help with the house for ages." The journey passed with Nathan pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of ranch life. Tabitha listened, occasionally writing questions on her slate. He never rushed her or showed impatience, simply waiting for her to finish writing before answering thoughtfully. By midday, they crested a hill, and the double cross spread before them a sprawling main house, bunkhouse, barn, and corrals nestled in a verdant valley with mountains rising behind them. Cattle dotted the grasslands, and a creek wound like a silver ribbon through the property. "Home, sweet home," Nathan said with evident pride. "Not much to look at compared to Boston, I reckon, but it grows on you." Sarah Carson was waiting on the porch as they pulled up, a plump, pleasant-faced woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. She hurried down to meet them. "You must be Tabitha. Welcome, dear. We're so pleased you've come to help us." She embraced Tabitha warmly. "Nathan's told us all about you. Don't you worry about not speaking. We've got plenty of quiet folk around here who do just fine." Tabitha was shown to a small but cozy cabin near the main house. It had a bed, table, chair, and wood stove, simple, but more than she'd dared hope for. That evening, she joined the Carsons for dinner, meeting Howard Carson, a gruff but fair-minded rancher who asked practical questions about her cooking experience. Life at the Double Cross quickly fell into a rhythm. Tabitha rose before dawn to help prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, spent the day assisting Sarah with household tasks, and found time in the evenings to sketch the stunning landscape around her. The Cowboys were initially curious about her silence, but following Nathan and the Carsons' lead, they soon accepted her presence without comment. Nathan remained kind but kept a respectful distance, busy with the 1,000 tasks required of a ranch foreman. Still, Tabitha often felt his eyes on her across the dining room, and occasionally he would bring her wildflowers or interesting rocks he found while out riding the range. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Tabitha was sitting on a rock by the creek, sketching the sunset when Nathan approached, leading his horse. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She gestured to the space beside her, and he settled down, removing his hat. "That's mighty fine," he said, glancing at her drawing. "You've captured the light just right." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky blazed orange and purple, then faded to deep blue. Stars appeared one by one, like silver pinpricks in velvet. "I had a brother who didn't speak," Nathan said suddenly. "Younger than me by 6 years. Thomas was his name." Tabitha looked at him in surprise. He'd never mentioned a brother before. He wasn't born that way, got kicked by a horse when he was 4, damaged something inside his head. Doctor said he might never talk again. Nathan picked up a stone and skipped it across the creek. Pa wanted to send him away to some institution back east, but Ma wouldn't hear of it. Tabitha touched his arm gently, encouraging him to continue. "Thomas understood everything, same as you. He just couldn't get the words out. Ma taught him to read and write, and he was smart as a whip." Nathan's voice grew softer. "He died when he was 12. Pneumonia took him in 68. Tabitha wrote on her slate, "I am sorry for your loss." "It was a long time ago," Nathan said, though the pain in his eyes suggested otherwise. "I just wanted you to know why it doesn't bother me that you don't speak. Some folks don't understand that silence doesn't mean there's nothing to say." Tabitha's heart swelled at his words. For the first time since losing her voice, she felt truly seen. The autumn days grew shorter, and the aspen trees turned gold against the evergreens. Tabitha found herself watching for Nathan whenever she stepped outside, her pulse quickening at the sight of him astride his buckskin gelding. She told herself it was foolish a man like Nathan, respected and admired, would have no interest in a broken woman like her. Yet he sought her company with increasing frequency. He taught her to ride, patiently showing her how to saddle a gentle mare and guiding her on short trips around the ranch. He brought her books from his own small collection, discussing the stories with her in the evenings on the porch. Sarah watched their growing friendship with knowing eyes. "That boy's sweet on you," she told Tabitha one day as they kneaded bread dough side by side. Haven't seen him this attentive since he courted Mary Ellison years back. Tabitha blushed, shaking her head. Even if Nathan did care for her, what kind of life could they have? She couldn't call his name, couldn't whisper words of love, couldn't sing to their children. The first snow fell in early November, dusting the mountains and transforming the ranch into a winter wonderland. With the cattle moved to lower pastures and the most pressing work complete, the ranch settled into its winter routine. On a clear, cold evening, Nathan invited Tabitha for a sleigh ride. Howard had built the sleigh years ago for Sarah, and Nathan had polished the runners and hitched his strongest horse to pull it. Bundled in blankets, they glided over the snow-covered fields, the only sound the jingling of bells on the harness and the soft shush of the runners. Under a full moon that turned the snow to silver, Nathan guided the sleigh to a stand of pines that sheltered them from the wind. He helped Tabitha down, his hands lingering at her waist. "I've been wanting to talk to you," he said, his breath clouding in the cold air. "These past few months, getting to know you, they've been the best of my life." Tabitha's heart hammered against her ribs. She clutched her slate, uncertain what to write. "I know there are challenges," Nathan continued. "I know some might think I'm a fool for feeling this way, but Tabitha, I've never met anyone like you. You see the world differently. You truly listen in a way most folks never bother to do." He took her gloved hands in his. "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just wanted you to know that I care for you deeply, and if you might someday feel the same." Tabitha stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. She dropped her slate into the snow and threw her arms around his neck, pressing her face against his chest. She felt his heart beating, strong and steady, as his arms encircled her. "I'll take that as a maybe," he said, a smile in his voice. That night, Tabitha couldn't sleep. She paced her small cabin, touching her lips, remembering the feel of Nathan's strong arms around her. For the first time in years, she tried to speak, forming his name with her mouth, "NN." But only a whisper of air escaped. The days that followed were filled with stolen moments of happiness. Nathan courted her properly, always respectful, asking permission from the Carsons as if they were her family. They rode together when weather permitted, sat by the fire in the main house reading in comfortable silence, and developed their own language of looks and gestures that needed no slate to interpret. Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations for the holiday feast. The bunkhouse was decorated with pine boughs, and Sarah spent days baking pies and cookies. Tabitha helped fashion simple gifts for everyone: embroidered handkerchiefs, sketches of favorite horses, sachets filled with dried lavender. For Nathan, she worked in secret on a detailed drawing of the ranch as seen from their favorite spot by the creek, framed in polished wood that Howard helped her prepare. She hoped it would convey what she couldn't say, that this place had become her home and he the center of her world. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner with the entire ranch gathered in the main house, Nathan asked Tabitha to join him on the porch despite the cold. The stars blazed overhead, and their breath mingled in the frosty air. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small package from his pocket. "I wanted to give it to you privately." Tabitha unwrapped it carefully to find a delicate silver locket. Inside was a tiny portrait of her that he must have commissioned from a traveling artist who had visited the ranch in autumn. "Open the other side," Nathan urged. The second half contained a lock of dark hair tied with thread. "It's Thomas's," Nathan explained softly. "Ma saved it, and I've kept it all these years. I want you to have it. The two people who taught me that words aren't the only way to speak." Tears spilled down Tabitha's cheeks as she clutched the locket. She had never received a gift so thoughtful, so personal. She looked up at Nathan, trying to convey with her eyes what her voice could not. "Tabitha," he said, suddenly kneeling before her in the snow. "I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I feel I've known you all my life. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The world seemed to stop. Tabitha stared at him, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. How could she be a proper wife, a proper mother, What if he grew tired of her silence? Nathan read the doubt in her face. "I love you," he said simply. "All of you. Your silence is part of who you are, and I wouldn't change a thing about you." Tabitha closed her eyes, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed. She had to try one more time to speak the one word that mattered most. "Nah." The sound was barely audible, a broken whisper. Nathan's eyes widened. "Tabitha," she swallowed hard, focusing all her will. "Nah then." It was rough, raspy from years of disuse, but it was his name. Her first word in 5 years was his name. Nathan stared at her in astonishment, then gathered her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her in a circle. "You spoke. You said my name." Tears streamed down Tabitha's face as she nodded, clinging to him. She couldn't manage more words, not yet, but she had broken through the wall of silence that had imprisoned her for so long. "Is that a yes?" Nathan asked, setting her gently on her feet, his own eyes wet with tears. Tabitha nodded emphatically, then pointed to her chest, crossed her arms over her heart, and pointed to him their silent symbol for "I love you." "I love you too," he whispered, cupping her face in his hands and kissing her tenderly. They were married in the spring, when wildflowers carpeted the valley and new calves dotted the pastures. The entire town of Silver Creek turned out for the ceremony, including Martha Bell, who wept openly when Tabitha managed to whisper her vows. Her voice returned gradually, never strong, always with a slight rasp, and sometimes deserting her when she was tired or upset. But Nathan never seemed to mind, treasuring each word as a gift and still understanding her silences better than anyone else. They built a house of their own on a rise overlooking the creek, close enough to the main ranch for Nathan to perform his duties as foreman, but with privacy enough to start their family. Howard and Sarah treated Tabitha as the daughter they never had. And when their first child was born a year after the wedding, a sturdy boy, they named Thomas. The elder Carsons doted on him like the grandchild he was in all but blood. 3 more children followed over the years, twin girls, Elizabeth and Martha, and another boy they called Howard. All had their mother's artistic talent and their father's way with horses. None inherited Tabitha's silence. Their home rang with laughter and conversation. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan took Tabitha back to the creek where they had first begun to know each other. The ranch had prospered under his management, and when Howard retired, Nathan and Tabitha had taken over operations entirely. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked as they sat side by side, watching the sunset much as they had a decade earlier. "Coming west, marrying a rough cowboy instead of some Boston gentleman?" Tabitha laughed softly. Her voice, though stronger now, still held the husky quality of disuse. "Not for a single moment," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You heard me when no one else would listen. You saw me when no one else would look." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple. "Best decision I ever made, offering you that job. Though I reckon I'd have found some excuse to keep you around even if we hadn't needed help in the kitchen. And here I thought you admired my cooking," she teased. "Darlin', I love you something fierce, but those first biscuits you made could have broken a window." They laughed together, comfortable in the love they had built over a decade of joy and hardship, silence and words. As twilight deepened around them, Tabitha thought of how far she had come from that dusty day in Silver Creek, when she'd stood alone with nothing but a valise and a crumpled letter. She had found not just a home but a voice, a family, a purpose. "Nathan," she said, savoring the name that had broken her silence so many years ago. "Yes, love, thank you for hearing me, even when I couldn't speak." He squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting the first stars appearing overhead. "I'll always hear you, Tabitha, always." And as night fell over the Double Cross Ranch, they walked home hand in hand, their footsteps in perfect rhythm, to the house filled with the voices of their children, the greatest testament to a love that had begun in silence, but would echo through generations to come.